All right, well, let's get started. Thanks for standing by. All right, welcome everyone. I'm Jessica Mkhitaryan with the Ocean Observing and Monitoring Division here at NOAA Research. Thank you for joining us for the first ever NOAA Research-led panel to celebrate International Women's Day. Thank you. So this is the second day of our two-part panel. The women you're going to hear from today have been nominated by their peers based on their notable achievements in science, leadership, mentorship, or promoting positive change. Our call for nominations a few weeks ago had such a great turnout that we were frankly overwhelmed. So I want to just thank everyone who nominated someone or who helped make this event happen. Also, all the women nominated will be featured in our digital campaign on the NOAA Research website, and you can find us by following the hashtag #WomenOfNOAA. NOAA's Research Line Office includes 7 programs and 7 labs and supports 16 nonprofit and academic cooperative institutes across the country that together research weather and air quality, climate, and ocean and coastal resources. So today we will have women joining us from 2 of these programs, 1 lab and 1 cooperative institute. Let's start by having everyone introduce themselves. And Emily, can you tell us your name and what you do at NOAA and how long you've been in this position?
Sure. Hi, I'm Emily Osborne. I'm a program manager here in OIR for NOAA's Arctic Research Program, and I joined NOAA in 2017 as a Canal Sea Grant Fellow.
My name is Kandis Boyd. I am the Deputy Director of the Office of Weather and Air Quality in NOAA Research. And in August, I will celebrate my 25th continuous year at NOAA.
That's great. And let's start with Sophie in the line.
My name is Sophie Chu. I am currently a postdoc at the NOAA Pacific Marine Environmental Lab. And I am the Cooperative Institute person, so I'm technically a University of Washington employee. I just passed my 2-year mark and am transitioning to a research scientist next month.
Great. And last but not least, Jessie.
Hi everyone, I'm Jessie Creamean. I'm calling in from Colorado State University. I worked at NOAA in Boulder for about 6 years and transitioned to here, but I am a PI in the NOAA Arctic Research Program that Emily works in.
Awesome. All right, well, let's start with really getting into women in STEM. So women make up half of the total U.S. college-educated workforce, but only 29% of the science and engineering workforce. So this isn't really new information for us women. I think we're aware that there are challenges, and I just wanted to bring to the panel, despite knowing this, what has really influenced you or pushed you to continue in your field?
I think for me, growing up, seeing that science was a path that I could pursue as a young person was really important for me. So my dad is a civil engineer and always dreamed of me becoming a civil engineer, but spent a lot of time with me in the outdoors and taking me fishing and hiking. And so I really fell in love with earth science from an early age, and he was always pushing me to go to these women or girls in science workshops and giving me microscopes and molecular models for early birthdays. And so for me, he opened up a window for me to see that that was a career that I could pursue, even if most people that were scientists didn't look like me.
I think for me, it was a similar path. I kind of always was really interested in science, and Emily, kind of like you, I had fun toys too, but I had a chemistry set since I'm a chemist. But just like as going through my career and going through education in college even, and just seeing how there weren't a lot of women in my chemistry classes, and there weren't a lot of women, especially as you get into more advanced classes. So that kind of motivated me to keep going, to say, hey, we need to really build up our representation in these fields. and especially grad school.
I'll go next. My father was a science teacher, so I didn't know anything but science. and my mother was an educator as well. She was a computer science teacher for middle school. So throughout my upbringing, there was a strong background in STEM. I didn't know what STEM was. I don't think I heard the term until I actually started my career, but it was just something that was ingrained in me from an early age.
Wow, that's great. Great. Sophie, would you like?
I think for me, my parents always supported anything that I wanted to do, and I never thought like, oh, science is not for girls or something like that. I was also super tomboy when I was little, and played with Legos a lot, so that sort of I went to college for engineering, and then moved into the ocean after for grad school. So yeah, I never thought like, oh, I can't do science, and it didn't really bother me if my classes had a bunch of boys in them.
That's great. What are some challenges that you may have faced in your career or in school, and how have you learned to overcome them? Tough one. So feel free to jump in.
Well, I can start. So it's probably no strain of the eyes to see that I am female, I am African American, and I'm in middle career. And so I've found that many people see those as limitations, but I found those to be challenges, and I found those to work to my favor. So I acknowledge the elephant in the room, and I use that to overcome those challenges. So for example, I have always learned to be 3 times as good to get 1/2 of the credit. I have to always check, double check, triple check the words that, or the data or the information that I'm presenting. And then also, I've learned to network and build bridges and work with people, through people, and for people to get things done. And so, I've had to learn sometimes that maybe I'm not the one presenting the idea, but maybe I'm the one who started the idea. And those are some of the challenges that I've had to overcome, because I think a lot of us are centric. We want to be the one who gets the credit for everything. But Zig Ziglar said, sometimes you can have anything you want in life if you don't mind who gets the credit. So I think that's one of the challenges that I've had to overcome, is just learning to be humble, learning to focus on the goal, and learning to work with people to accomplish those things that I want.
That's really great advice. You also like another piece of advice that I think is a good one to share. It's about speaking up a little bit.
Oh yeah, I think I'm the youngest of 3, so I've always learned that the squeaky wheel gets the oil. So I learned at a young age, if you want something, you have to go after it. You have to speak and say what you want, and you have to have a trajectory. You have to have a goal. You have to have a plan. And I think that for everyone, you need to figure out, what do you want to do in 5 years? What do you want to do in 10 years? If you still want to be sitting in this seat, then something's wrong. And so it's okay not to reach those goals, but studies have shown that those who write down those goals and come up with a plan, you're more likely to achieve it. So if there's something that you want to do, write it out now and figure out how you're going to get to that goal, and use your network and use the people around you to achieve those things that you want.
I think for me, since being at NOAA, there have been a number of occasions where I look and feel like an outsider. So I've been in meetings and in elevators and conversations where like my opinion matters less because of my age and because of my gender. I feel like I'm treated differently. Sometimes I'll walk into a meeting and the men will stand up and shake hands with each other, and they won't extend to shake my hand. I've even extended my hand in that situation and not gotten a handshake in return. And so when that happens, I think I've had to kind of harness that energy into a positive direction, and to really feel like when I'm sitting in that room and I'm at that table with all older white men, which has happened a number of times in the last couple of years, that instead of feeling intimidated, I let that make me feel empowered, that I've gotten into this room and I'm sitting at this table and I have a voice and it matters, and that I need to use my voice to affect this change, which really matters to me.
Yeah, for me, there's been a number of times throughout my career, particularly early on, when you're thought less of just because of, again, age and gender. And really, you have to almost not take offense to it and use it to like be like, oh, I'll show you. Like, I'm gonna get this done, and I'm gonna do it with 110%, and you're gonna see that I can do it as well, or if not better than you. So you really have to take that as like a motivational thing, kind of like what you were saying, Emily, and take those challenges as opportunities to really shine.
Yeah, I just would be repeating what you guys have said.
If they did it.
I think for me, like doing field work, people think that you can't like lift something heavy or you don't know how to use tools. And I'm like, I've been doing this for like months by myself. You weren't there, basically we had like a visiting person come into the field with me, and I had been doing this for months by myself. And then the guy was like, oh, like, let me get that for you. Like, I don't know if you can carry it. And I was like, we were on a tiny boardwalk, like with water surrounding us. Like, don't try to take this thing out of my hand because it might fall over. And like, I was just like so upset that he would, I don't know, assume that I couldn't do this thing that I had already been doing by myself. So I mean, I just pushed him off, but
Off the boardwalk?
no, off of the instrument that I was carrying.
Yeah, I think it's important to brush that off sometimes, but I really like the response that using that challenging time to feel empowered. I think that's a really good message for our listeners today. Kind of going off that, how everyone views this differently. How do you define success? What does it mean? What has marked success for you?
I'm still figuring that out.
That's okay.
I think when I first came to NOAA, I had the sense of I need to prove myself. I need to, do 3 times as much as like you were talking about. I was like, yes, I've been in that mental state, and I've gotten to the point where it's all work and no life. And so I think I kind of am still striking that balance of what I feel like I need to do to be a successful young female scientist, but at the same time having a happy life at home, because that's super important. And yeah, I'm still working on figuring that out.
I've had several successful moments throughout my career. Some are planned and some are unplanned. And I think you just have to rise to the challenge. But I think it goes back to what I said before about having a 5 and a 10-year plan, that you're going to not only celebrate the end game, but you're going to celebrate the journey along the way. And sometimes you do need to stop and just say, hey, this week I accomplished maybe 7 of the 10 things I was going to. It's okay. It's okay that I didn't get all of them done, but I'm still progressing toward that goal. So some of the successes in my career, I created a flood and flash flood campaign called Turn Around, Don't Drown. And that was over a decade ago, and I still hear it now when you watch the news and you hear newscasters talking about inundation and don't drive into flooded roadways. Remember, turn around, don't drown. And that's something that I was able to create early in my career. And then, as I mentioned before, some of the unplanned successes, I was the on-site meteorologist for Hurricane Katrina. So I was the one who was providing around-the-clock briefings to Governor Blanco and all of the senior officials for 11 days before, during, and even after the landfall of Hurricane Katrina. Again, that's something that just happened, and I had to rise to the occasion. And I feel that many times throughout our careers, there will be those challenges, that luck is when opportunity meets preparation, and you have to prepare yourself for those moments because you don't know when they're going to come.
Absolutely. That's so cool.
I think for me, I've had a few successful moments, and it's just kind of all feeding off each other and just spiraling even to feeling even better about my career. So just probably one of my most successful moments was publishing a high impact paper in the Journal of Science. And so that has really gotten me a lot of recognition, and that kind of leads to having a bigger network. So I have these opportunities that people are like, oh, that's that person that wrote that paper. And so we want to invite them to give a seminar at our institution, or we want to invite them to give talks at this conference. And so it kind of, you have this one defining moment sometimes that really spurs your career growth. And so getting to know people and getting these opportunities to give invited talks and having people know your work and respect you is really, really cool. And especially as a woman, and I mean, a lot of times I would be at conferences and people would come up to me after talks or posters, and they'd be like, oh, so you're that person that wrote that paper. And it's kind of funny to see the look on their face. They don't expect this like red-haired woman with a nose piercing to be like, this woman who wrote this paper. And so it's, to me, that's successful and puts a smile on my face to say that, hey, people appreciate what I do, and they don't look at me as just a woman who's whatever, she's a scientist. They're like, oh, she's actually does really good work. So for me, that's been a really huge thing for me in terms of success.
I think for me, I like to celebrate like when I get my code to work, and that's successful for me. Obviously, like I like celebrating big things too, but for me, I like, the little wins also help me along the way when I'm working on my next piece of code and I'm like ripping my hair out. I can remember that, at the end of that, it will be worth it.
Absolutely. Yeah, little wins are important to celebrate, and I think that also goes towards talking about what you touched on, Emily, is learning to balance. And actually, this year, the International Women's Day official theme is balance for better. So I recently read an article that came out saying that almost half of U.S. women with full-time jobs in STEM fields leave the sector or go part-time after having their first child. And this was after an 8-year-long study. So I don't know whether or not you have children, or I know this can be applicable to other responsibilities. Maybe you want to touch on how you've dealt with balancing work and not work part of your life. How does that work for you?
Well, I think I'm a bit of an anomaly. I have 2 kids, and I started later in life. I had my first son at 37, and I had my daughter at 41. So I'm in a mommy's group, and I'm as old as some of the grandmothers that attend, and that's okay. But I think that I made a conscious career decision that I wanted to get to a certain point in my career before having kids. It worked for me, but I'm not saying that that's necessarily the template or the mold that everyone should have. And I think with my first child, I wanted to show everyone that I could be a superwoman and I could do everything. And with my second child, I asked for help at every single opportunity. And again, it's okay, because I think you just learn that you need to have a network and you need to do what's best for you at that particular time. So for those women who chose to enter the workforce at a certain time or leave the workforce at a certain time, and their decision was based on family, I salute them. I think that's great, and I think that it's great that we have the option. And I think as managers, we should also look into options that can help us retain good employees throughout their career choices. So that might mean going part-time for a certain period of time, or having the ability to telework. I think that as a workforce, if we really want to have the best and brightest around, we need to look at what the alternatives are to make sure that our workforce stays intact in the years to come.
That's great, yeah.
Well, I might be on the opposite side of the spectrum from you, Candace. I have no kids. Two fur babies, but that's a different story. But for me, I went from school to school to school to job to, or postdoc to job. And I've found it an internal struggle to say, hey, am I actually going to ever have a family? Because, starting off early in your career, it's a lot of work. And I don't know, I can't possibly imagine me having kids right now. I mean, maybe I will when I'm 37, 41, I don't know. But for me, I really love my job and I travel so much. And it's nice that, women do have the option to, if they want to raise a family, they can choose to do that and leave the workforce. Or people, like me, who I prefer to stay in my career and not have a family. So for me, the balancing personal life and work is different. But my personal life includes, as I said, fur babies and hobbies like skiing and hiking and climbing and all this stuff. So I have a different work-life balance, but it's definitely very important to maintain that, whether it's family or pets or hobbies or anything like that.
So I also don't have any children yet, but I am getting married this year. Yay! And definitely want to have babies at some point in the future, but I would be lying if I said I didn't kind of struggle with the idea of what is this timeline, when is the perfect time to have kids, which I don't think there is one, and then what will my life look like when I have babies, because I think naturally they will just like overwhelm me and become my priority. But I also am so scared to let go of everything I've worked so hard on in this career that I'm like really striving to build. And so it is kind of scary thinking about that there will possibly have to be a trade-off and what my happiness will be, and will I be satisfied with that. And I think I'm fortunate that I have a partner that I've talked to a lot about this throughout the years, and he's watched me go through graduate school and this career and is very supportive. And we've talked about him being an at-home dad if that's what comes to pass. And so I have somebody who is willing to have that conversation with me and really share the responsibility of our whole lives together.
So important.
Yeah, he's a good man.
Yeah. We need men like that support us.
Also no kids. And I recently got engaged, and thank you. And my fiance and I have been together for a really long time, and I sort of, in my mind, I kind of didn't really want to have kids during my PhD. And now that that's over, we're like sort of like, after we get married, we'll sort of think about having kids soon, but right now we're just having fun, just the two of us. And I don't know, I haven't really, I think I'm thinking about it sort of separately with my career right now. Like when I feel like I want to have kids, then I'm just going to have them regardless of where I am in my career. For me also, my mom had me when she was 39, so like a older pregnancy is not like as like stigma as, for a lot of other people. So
yeah, I think that's becoming more common with this generation and the workforce right now anyway. So yeah, I think it's good to see that it can happen and that you have been successful with it, Candace.
Yeah.
And that it's a model that we can all look to also. But also, I like that you did mention that you asked for help, because I think that's hard for a lot of women too. And so let's see. So speaking of that, what would you say to people who might be kind of struggling today with either their say their studies in science or are early career scientists or professionals? What advice would you give to girls today?
I think for me, I spoke earlier about how important my dad was for me in my life, for kind of opening my eyes and making me see myself in a career path that maybe wasn't the typical path of being an English teacher or a nurse. And so I think having somebody like that, or for me, I want to be that for somebody, for young people, to be an example of you can do this and you can be a girly girl and still like to play in the mud and be a scientist or be a doctor or whatever you want. The world is your oyster, that you should keep your mind open to all things and not feel like you need to follow a particular path.
I think mentoring is really important, to mentor and to be mentored, and to have a network that you feel comfortable with, just talking about your dreams or your desires or your goals. I think many times, as I said before, just writing it down and trying to chart your path is really important. And sometimes you have to learn to not take no for an answer. So if this door shuts, then another one can open. And I would encourage anyone to think outside the box. I mean, just because you have a degree in one area doesn't mean opportunities are limited. So think about how that degree or how your passion can be used in other ways. Is really important.
I like that.
I would tell younger women, and I mentor a lot of young women in the sciences. It's really been rewarding for me, and I hope for them as well. But I would say, you're going to come across challenging obstacles in your career, especially as a woman in the STEM fields. And so just know that, be strong and be confident and get through those times. There's light at the end of the tunnel. All of us are going to go through challenges, including men as well, where, women aren't the only ones that struggle in the STEM fields. And so just know that you can get through any challenging times that you have, whether it's with school or research or dealing with people in your field. You can get through it, and it's going to be a rewarding experience to know that you got through that challenging time, and it makes you a stronger person and a stronger scientist. For example, I had a lot of challenging times in grad school, but I got through it, and honestly, it made me a better scientist. It made me more self-sufficient, and made me more open-minded towards other people and challenges. So I think that's really important, is to just know you can overcome these hurdles, and also be supportive of other women in the sciences. I mean, I've had experiences where women are catty towards each other in the science out of jealousy, and it's just ridiculous to me. But there are ways, that we can work together and really support each other and help you, get through these challenging times. It's always great to have, another female counterpart to help you, give advice, whether it's an older female or someone your age in your same class. It's nice to be supportive of each other and really help each other strive to be better scientists and a better person.
Yeah, I would agree that mentoring is really important, and then not just like a senior person and a younger person, but peer mentoring. I pulled a lot on other grad students in my cohort for support, and I found that whenever I felt like I was the only one feeling like this, when I would talk about it with someone else, they would say that they were also feeling like that, and that would make both of us feel better about our situations, and that yeah, I mean, just feeling like you're not going through it alone is really good. And yeah, being more confident. I still am working on that.
Do you have any advice for people to find a mentor? What's maybe a simple first step for somebody who could be looking?
My suggestion would be one mentor does not fulfill all roles. So you may have a spiritual mentor. You might have a mentor, maybe someone in your family. You may have someone who works and helps you in your career path. And remember that there's an ebb and flow. So I've had mentors that I've had a relationship with for over 20 years, but I may not have spoken with them for several years. And we just have that type of relationship where it can literally pick up where it left off, and we can continue that relationship. Most of my mentor relationships are organic, meaning our paths have crossed. There was a synergy for whatever reason. We just had a connection, and we are mentors to that day, and or to this day. So I would also say, if there's someone that you think would be a good fit for you, to acknowledge that, and just to ask them if you can call on them, either to be mentored or to mentor them as well.
And sometimes there are programs that, you know, if you, for instance, at CSU, we have this program called Progress, and it's promoting acronyms, not going to remember it, but it's promoting women and so undergrad women in the STEM fields reach out to this program, and then they pair us mentors with the mentees based off of common interests or what we're looking for in a mentorship. So there are programs out there maybe available through academic institutions, maybe even I've mentored women through NOAA sponsored programs as well. So there are programs out there. Sometimes they're not as easy to find, but they do exist, and it is a nice way if you don't know kind of where to start. That's a nice way you can pick up a mentor or two or three.
So I'm part of this group called Society for Women in Marine Science, and we recently started a mentorship program. I think it's geared mostly towards like the grad student scientist level, but I know that there are programs in Seattle for high school and middle school students to be paired with someone like someone in college or someone in grad school. I think it's like you can just Google, you know, mentorship programs in marine science, or there's like the Skype a Scientist thing, which isn't necessarily mentorship, but still, you know, seeing as a real scientist in a classroom who might be a woman. I think a lot of women have signed up to do that. Yeah.
There's also the Earth Women's Science Network that has a pretty widespread reach, I think, and that might be a good resource for mentoring.
I think for me, most of my mentor relationships have developed organically through times. Advisors, people who work with me, friends. I think just hitting on what everyone has said, it's nice to have a range of different ages, perspectives, people that you can go to talk about certain kind of aspects of your work and life, and that's been super important to me to building up my confidence and feeling like I haven't been alone in going through some of the things that I've experienced.
Well, I want to leave some time for questions for the room. We have about 20 minutes. Let's go to questions, and then I'll keep my last question for the end if we still have time. Okay. So if you're on the webinar, feel free to type in a question, and we can get to you that way. And let's start in the room. We'll take any questions that you have for our panelists. Yeah.
So a lot of times I hear young girls today going, oh, I already have the right to vote. Oh, I can already pursue whatever career I want. Like, I don't feel the need to be part of like a women's movement or women's support groups and stuff.
So the question was if so women today may feel that they already have had the barriers broken down for them, but how can we motivate them to keep working to encourage women in STEM and encourage women to be part of these movements that are continuing to go on today?
I think having women in their careers show genuine excitement. I mean, it helps when, you know, I don't know, for example, when I'm talking to a student or someone who's interested in my work and I mentor a high school student, and she's this really sharp science student. But she's always asking me questions about how is it being a female in sciences, and sometimes she seems to get a little discouraged. So I think just, you know, showing how excited you are about your research and how cool it can be. I know when I tell young students, even men, that I've been on an icebreaker and I've seen polar bears, like they think it's just so cool. And I think to bring out that personal level of the research, not just I'm doing science all the time, I'm doing math, blah, 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 but that it can be a really fun thing, I think can really spark a lot of energy in younger women, especially coming from a woman who's older, who's gone through, you know, those same steps. I think that helps a lot to show that you're genuinely excited and interested and curious about helping them as well.
So I'm slightly taken aback because I just haven't ever heard a person say that, which I guess, like, I have mixed feelings because on the one hand, it's like, if you're not experiencing those emotions or that isn't, you know, your experience, then fantastic. What's the harm in continuing to support women who might be facing challenges that you're not? And particularly, you mentioned that it's younger people who are maybe saying that this isn't an issue in their eyes anymore. Those younger people might not have faced those hurdles yet. I know certainly in my experience in undergrad and grad school, life was great. I think that I maybe didn't see the whole perspective of this women in science and harassment issues, et cetera, and so that just wasn't my experience. And I think my eyes have been a lot more opened. And so I guess just asking to continue to be supportive of people who might not be as fortunate to not have those kind of issues in their life at that time is a step in the right direction.
Yeah, I also want to say, just jumping in, that it makes me think of like this whole Me Too movement that started a couple of years ago. Well, people didn't even talk about it or know it was an issue because we weren't communicating with each other. So I think communicating with other women and learning their experiences, kind of why we're here today, that is a step in opening your eyes to issues that all women face, maybe not you personally, but someone in your network.
And I want to touch on what you said. I think that the word movement is evolving. 50, 75 years ago, we were marching. And I mean, we still march today. But now it's a hashtag.
Yeah.
And so to those people who feel like they maybe don't need to be a part of a movement, I tell them you are. I mean, every time someone looks at you, you are representing that group, whether you want to or not. And so that person is probably a manifestation of the marches and all of the organized efforts to get women to this place. So again, choice is great. The person doesn't have to mobilize or be a part of an organization, but also help them understand that there's different ways that they can contribute that may not have been historically there generations ago. So tell them they're still a part of it, no matter what.
Same.
Questions? Go ahead.
So this is Jessica Snowden for those on the remote or who don't know me in the panel. So I love hearing all the talk about the different mentor experiences that people had, both as mentors and mentees. I find myself sitting here thinking a lot about women in leadership positions that I worked with or for, going from grad school all the way up till recently. And I feel like there were a lot of missed opportunities, that there were women in my life professionally who didn't show up thinking about how to be a better woman role model in a way. My question is, how do we help other women recognize that and help each other? I just think there are a lot of women who maybe don't think about their impact on others, and it seems like not just a missed opportunity, but detrimental. I mean, you hear about, Jessie's comment about people being catty. I think we've probably all experienced something like that. But how can we all do better? How can you approach someone who's maybe you think not pulling their weight?
So building bridges 101 is what I call it. We're all centrists, and what I mean by that is we all have our personal goals in mind when we make decisions. There's nothing wrong about that, but we have to recognize it. So how do I build a bridge is that I have to look at the situation from the other person's perspective, walk a mile in the other person's shoes, figure out what that person's goals are, and then not necessarily change their goals, but see how we can work together to move forward. And so, like you said, there are missed opportunities, and I feel that each one of us has to be the change agent. We have to be the ones that extend the hand, extend the olive branch, that try to work together. And it just might be talking to that person and learning what is going on in their lives that particular day. Many times, one day can evolve into a lifetime. So I would say for each of us to just work outside of our networks and to think of the other person as we go through our daily activities and lives. And I think that can help build a network and also just create a culture of inclusiveness.
Yeah, I think this is tricky because, as an example, I mentor this woman, and she had an academic advisor, but this person was terrible to her. And there's nothing really that I could do to talk to her advisor or anything and kind of like change how her advisor was acting towards her. But the advice that I would try to give my mentee, was that, again, you're going to come across challenging people and challenging situations, and just take this as an experience. And I tried to, build up her confidence and say, the stuff she's saying is, maybe maybe she had a bad day, kind of like what you were saying, Kandis. Like, it doesn't always mean that this person's terrible, but it's hard when you're a mentor of someone, a young person who also has a mentor or a more senior person to them who is not supportive in their role as like a female role model. So I just tried to kind of fix that from my angle, and I think it helped. I mean, she still had to deal with her advisor, and it was still challenging for her, but I think just by me being supportive of her in her situation, that helped her. So from the perspective of the young person, it is nice to have multiple role models who are women or mentors for them, because sometimes one of them might not work out, and so at least you have somebody else to fall back on instead of just depending on this one sole person for advice. But yeah, that's a tricky one to try to be like, all right, all women, let's stop being jerks to each other. And it's hard. It is a hard thing.
Katie, do we have any question on the line?
Online yet.
Okay.
Anywhere in the room.
Okay. Questions from the room. The question I have to ask everyone, we talked a lot about obstacles and some tough stuff in here, so I just want to say thank you for sharing first off. Would you like to share one of your proudest moments so far in your career?
I think I already have, so I'll pass.
So
Mine was my thesis defense, finishing my thesis defense. Because there were many, many times where I thought that I would not make it, and many times I wanted to quit, but and so that day is like, I remember that day, and every year I'm like, this is my thesis defense anniversary. I celebrate it because it was like pretty. Yeah. Still am surprised that I made it.
I already kind of talked about my paper, but another one is getting my first big grant. That was really a proud, awesome moment, and it's definitely led to more opportunities to get more grant funding and write papers and get to do really cool field work and travel. So it's kind of like one thing that just spawned into this awesome tree of fun, amazing, proud moments. So that was definitely awesome, was to get your first big grant for me.
For me, one of my proudest moments since being at NOAA has been it was this massive culmination of work to pull together this report that my program publishes each year called the Arctic Report Card, and it gets a lot of media attention, and it rolls out at this big conference, AGU, and I somehow managed to be the lead editor of the whole thing, and I was asked to be on the panel to help present the results, and there were all sorts of reporters and a full room of people, and I am a super introvert and very shy and like nervous and sweating up here right now, wishing I wasn't wearing a wool sweater. So like walking into that, I was like, oh my God, why did I say yes that I would do this? I'm so nervous. I didn't sleep last night. But getting up there and like having those words come out of my mouth with such confidence and such pride, and just representing this product that I'd worked so hard on was just such an amazing accomplishment. And to sit down in my seat and be like, it's over, was amazing. And another thing, Jessie, that you said earlier, which I experienced, which was just the cherry on the top of that cake, was so many people that I had been working with and emailing throughout that process were meeting me and seeing my face for the first time that day. And I had several people come up and be like, I can't believe like that you're you. And like, I didn't take it as an insult. It was like, wow, like you've been so professional and you've done so much, and you're a very early career person, and you're just not who I was expecting to see based on this interaction I've had with you, and that I'm so proud of the work that you've done. So that was definitely a star on that day.
And since I have it in front of me, the stats from that were that there were 700 media stories generated from the Arctic Report Card press conference that you were leading.
Woo!
That's impressive.
If you have time, we have a couple questions online.
Oh, great. Let's take one from the line.
Is there anything you would do differently in your studies or career? Is there anything that you would do differently in that aspect?
I don't have any regrets. The only thing I would say is I would have spoken up earlier. I think in my early career, I felt if you do a good job, that someone's going to have this magical wand and pick you and elevate you to the position that you ultimately want to be. But if you don't speak up and say what you want, no one's going to know it. So if I were to speak to my 20-year-old self, it would be to ask for what you want, go after what you want, take no prisoners, own your no, because there's going to be times in your career where you have to say no, and it's okay to say no. And I think that in my early career, those were the things that made me the most uncomfortable, was asking for what I wanted and to tell someone that I didn't want to do something.
So I am living that right now. That's what I'm trying to tell myself on a regular basis, and to be an advocate for myself, and to, just definitely speak up and identify and know what I want, and to really trust myself and to trust my gut when something doesn't feel right, that it's okay, I can, just trust yourself.
I really don't have anything to add to that. Like, that's pretty much spot on. Just kind of in parallel to that, like being more confident about speaking up. And yes, I mean, a lot of times, especially as a young female, you kind of, oh, I don't know if this is right, I shouldn't say anything, but just do it. Get your voice out there and heard. I mean, if you're wrong, you're wrong. Men are wrong all the time, so. No offense for any guys in the audience, but.
But no, I think we always try to be perfect, and you don't have to be. It's okay to be wrong. That's a good point.
Okay. I mean, if you're wrong, oh well, admit you're wrong. It's okay to be wrong sometimes.
Yeah.
Or not know.
Yeah, I'm also working on asking for what I want. And it's really important. And I wish that I had started working on that earlier. So.
Good point. Hard. One more question. Go for it.
What do you envision for future generations of women and underrepresented minorities and such in science and engineering?
I think the main barrier between, you said, women and minorities and non-minorities and men is opportunity. There still lacks opportunity for people to acquire jobs, to ascend to leadership positions, to get those multi-million-dollar grants, and to excel in different areas. So in my mind, the future looks bright. It's a matter of inclusiveness and to try and forge ways to expand opportunities to people regardless of your geographic background or your age or your gender or your race. So I think as an organization, NOAA continues to move forward in that aspect. I mean, that's one of the reasons why we're speaking today. And trying to forge creative opportunities for people to excel in different areas, I think is going to be what we need in the future.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be easier given that, you know, maybe someone who's, and as Emily was saying earlier, an older white male who has more maybe traditional conventional thinking. I mean, people like us who are more progressive are replacing these more senior roles. And so it's, you know, there's more open-mindedness just being spread into like leadership roles and the ability to offer opportunities to women and minorities and just be more open-minded to having these opportunities for all people, really. So yeah, I think that is going to be easier given us, you know, people like us are moving up and, you know, we're going to be able to have those changes be more common, I guess.
In the future, I hope that when somebody walks into a room, no matter what they look like, that they don't think about the way that they look.
I think it's important that we acknowledge that maybe like mentoring a woman or a minority will take more effort than mentoring, you know, someone who doesn't have these obstacles facing them. For instance, you know, if you come from, if you didn't have a role model who was like a scientist, then they may not understand how it will be to be a scientist. So you have to sort of go an extra step to explain things that you might not necessarily explain if someone was coming up with like two scientist parents and something like that. I mean, I'm not saying it right, but sort of get the drift, right?
Yeah, I think maybe what you mean, Sophie, like that people are all at a different level, and we maybe like to get kids, if we're trying to mentor younger kids and maybe they think science is really hard and they don't like it and they don't know people who are excelling in it, then that's going to take more effort to show them how good it could be or how interesting or exciting it could be. So
right.
Yeah. Any last questions from the room? Yeah.
What advice would you give to someone for instance with salary negotiation?
My bad. Oh, that was a good question. It was about advice for salary negotiation.
I literally just did this yesterday.
I'm all ears.
Share your insight.
And like I was like, I don't know if my like boss is on this or not, but
I know that's what I was thinking.
I was like pumping myself up for like weeks, and like talking to so many people, and then I had like a number in mind, but then I ended up not saying that number because I sort of chickened out, but I still got more than the original offer, so I feel like it was successful. And I don't know, it's really, really hard. I had to like talk myself up so much. But I think but I got the number that I was like, I would be happy with. Not the one that I'd be like really, really happy with, but like, so I think you just have to sort of pick what you like, the bottom line for you, and then, you know, kind of in your mind have like what you've accomplished and why you deserve that. And then like say it. If you don't chicken out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just went through this last summer because I started this job at CSU, and it is hard because I asked for advice from people when I was going through it, and you know, someone, I don't remember who told me, but they were like, you know, men don't think twice about what number they want, and they ask for it. So I was like, well, I'm gonna do that too. So I mean, and what's the worst that could happen? Like, all right, I asked for a number that was probably more than I should have been paid, but I just was seeing like, oh, maybe this is possible. And then, you know, we negotiated. I didn't get that exact number, but it was close to it. But I was still like, oh, well, it's not like they thought worse of me because I asked for this ostentatious number for a salary. So, I mean, what's the worst that'll happen? They'll just be like, no. I'm not going to think any less of you or anything. If I think that's what women are worried, like, oh, they're going to think badly of me that I ask for too much or too aggressive, but really I don't think that's the case. We just have this natural thought of that for some reason.
For me, I chickened out because I psyched myself out. Like I was like, I don't deserve that number. So I mean, I had been building myself up for like a week, and then I was like, I deserve this number, and then I got there and I was like, I don't deserve this number.
I was just going to add that negotiation is more than just dollars. You can negotiate, at least in the federal government, you can negotiate training. You can negotiate telework options. You can negotiate a plethora of items. So I would say prioritize your list, and just as you said, do your homework. There are so many websites out there that can tell you salaries of federal government employees, so you should know where your salary should be in that particular band. And again, own your no. I mean, if it's something that you just will not take, then there's another job waiting for you. And I think a lot of times when you're in those negotiations, you feel like you have to go with that particular number. And if it's not what you want, then literally ask, well, let's sit down, let's talk about it. Help me understand why you feel that this is the number that I should be comfortable with. And it is an uncomfortable situation, but understanding the other person's point of view may help you come to a compromise or come to a solution. So if you're going through it, good luck.
Great. All right, well, we are a few minutes over, so I'm going to wrap us up. Thank you so much for speaking with us today. I want to remind everyone about our digital campaign. You can follow us all month long. Just follow #WomenOfNOAA. So thank you, Emily Osborne, Kandis Boyd, Jessie Creamean, and Sophie Chu for joining us today. Happy International Women's Day to everyone here and on the line. All right. Bye-bye.